Today we're going to discuss spinal cord stimulators and whether or not they are safe.
We've just received word from the fleet. They've engaged the Borg.
Hello, I am Joseph of Borg. And I want to welcome you to my live stream on YouTube called Surfing the Pain. Today we're going to discuss whether or not spinal cord stimulators are actually safe. This has been something that's been on the chat rooms and in the groups a whole lot this last week or so due to some articles coming out, and that's going to be our topic for discussion. This is the most ambitious live stream I've ever done. So I just want to ask you all to bear with me. This is easily going to be the most complicated live stream I've ever done. But I think this is a topic that, in light of some of the articles that have come out lately, really needs to be had. So that's why we're here today, and that's why we're going to address this issue. So for those of you who don't know me real quick, my name is Joseph of Borg. I create live streams and videos on YouTube having to do with chronic pain. I do a weekly live stream on Sunday nights at 5 o'clock Pacific time. I come to you from Las Vegas, and I have to have my coffee, so forgive me. So before we get started, I just want to make a couple of disclaimers because we live in America. We need disclaimers. So I know this is going to come as a shock. I am not a doctor. I am not a statistician. I am simply somebody who has a spinal cord stimulator for my low back issues. I also have cervical issues, which a spinal cord stimulator is simply not a good option to get. So it's just not feasible for my cervical issues. All that said, just so that you know where I'm coming from, these are my opinions. These are things I think you should address. I chose to do this show because I do an awful lot of interaction on the internet. I've been a member of the chronic pain community basically as long as there's been a chronic pain community online. And when I start to see a topic a lot, or quite honestly get tired of responding over and over to the same topic, I figure that's usually a good indication to me, excuse me, that it might be a topic I want to address. So, that said, let's get right into the topic. I've got my notes. I do a real loose show. I like to keep it live. I don't like to read from a script. I want to engage with you guys so that you can engage with me. Towards the end of the show, I'm going to open it up for phone calls. I do have the ability for you guys to call me and talk to me live. I thought that would be nice because I know personally I have a hard time typing due to my cervical issues and spinal issues that affect my upper arms and whatnot. So if you have a question, type it in. If you the chat, I'll try and keep an eye on that. Also, if you have a question and you want to wait and call me, that's fine too. Like I said, I'll be setting that up for the end of the show. I really hope somebody will call me because I want to test out the technology for it. So that's what we got on the agenda for today. I'm going to refer to my notes a lot because I feel this is a really important issue and it's something I would really like to address to people. This is probably the most common thing I get asked about spinal cord stimulators. Are they safe and are they FDA approved? So, of course, the FDA... What you think of the FDA is really kind of a personal thing. They've approved stuff in the past that hasn't worked. Could they do a better job? Absolutely. Everybody's got a different tolerance and opinion of the FDA. I guess that's a personal thing. And that kind of ties into the actual answer, if you will, to the question, are spinal cord stimulators safe? The answer is yes, and the answer is also no. Like most things in life, it's just not that black and white. Another reason I decided to make this video is I've run into a lot of fear mongers, I call them. Anytime you're looking at surgical procedures, especially something as serious as having to do with having them work on your spine, there's going to be risk involved. Everybody's risk tolerance is different. So I don't know exactly where you fall on that. These are decisions you're going to have to make for yourself with your doctor. Is driving a car safe? Our risk perception is somewhat fluid as human beings. If you have cars, are they safe? Well, relatively safe, but cars kill people every day. Are airplanes safe? Well, they're safer than cars statistically, but when a plane goes down, it makes the news every time a plane goes down, and generally everybody on the plane ends up injured or dead. Jets are probably perceived as being safer than prop planes. Commercial flights are safer than private planes, but when a private plane goes down, it's a few people. When a big commercial carrier goes down, it's hundreds of casualties often. So what is safe and what is risky is somewhat fluid and can be a very slippery thing. So I guess I really wanted to drive this point home with something everybody can relate to. I'm going to do my best here to show my desktop and show you guys a little bit of information, and let's talk about it. Especially I'm going to address these couple of articles that were put out in the last week. So let's see how this works out for me. All right, you guys should be seeing my desktop. Yep, looks like that's working. All right, I'm going to have to wing it because I can't look at obviously the streaming software and this. The Pain News Network recently came out with this article talking about faulty medical devices blamed for thousands of deaths. And that's true. It seems, I think this to me set the tone that they might be skewed in their perception just the way they're saying it. Obviously, I don't have the stats. I'm going to go by their stats and break it down, okay, so that you can get an idea if this may or may not be deemed safe or a good option for you. Could the FDA do a better job? Absolutely. Spinal cord stimulators, have got one of the worst safety records among the 4,000 devices tracked. 4,000 devices, that's a lot of devices. Some of the articles that I'm going to present here, just in case I forget, talk about, it's funny how they talk both ways. They'll say they don't report the numbers they implant, but then they'll give you a number of implants. Or, for example, one article I was reading talked about that they don't have any oversight in some places, like some places in South Africa, and then it goes on to talk about Mumbai. Well, and I'm not even sure I'm saying that right, but if they don't have any oversight, then we don't really know. So I'm not in a position to question their numbers. I don't have the means to collect the data, but I am going to tell you what I found when I ran some numbers off the data from what these guys are actually saying. So they talk about 500 deaths over 10 years. Okay, 500 deaths. I'm guessing you guys can see me highlighting that since 2008, roughly 10 years. Now, I've had people say, well, even 50 deaths a year is a lot. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Again, that goes back to your personal risk tolerance. I will tell you this. I've always believed that desperation causes courage. My point being, if you are in a terrible situation, you may take a terrible risk that you wouldn't normally take if you weren't in that situation. So, adversity causes courage. I just believe that to be true. So, no ways around it. They're talking 500 deaths. But when I broke the numbers down, over here it talks about 80,000, excuse me, since 2008. So that's 80,000 over 10 years. They also talk about 60,000 are now implanted annually. So that would be over 10 years, 600,000. Now, the fact that they're talking about the 10-year total here and the annual total here seems like they have a little bit of prejudice in their article, and that's fine. All journalism has a point of view. It's not like they're hiding it. So just, okay, I'm not picking on them, but the best numbers I've got, whether or not they're accurate, how accurate they are, I don't know, but from this article that seems to have a critical flavor to it, I'm taking their numbers because I figure that way it's probably a worst case scenario. So if you take the 80,000 complications and injuries over 10 years and divide it by the 600,000 implants over 10 years, you get a failure rate of around 13.3%, give, take. I'm using their numbers. I'm doing the math. Okay, it's certainly close enough for our conversation. Is 13% acceptable to you? I don't know. What exactly are complications? This is another article I found, and I just brought this article up to show deaths down here in the dark color, pretty low. Injuries, obviously much higher. What made me look at this, and I just want to show this, medical devices potentially linked to almost 83,000 deaths. Well, potentially linked is, kind of vague. So, continuing on. This is from PubMed. This is the National Library of Medical and National Institute of Health. It's a pretty well-respected source. It talks about spinal cord stimulators, and I will do my best after the show to put a link to each of these pages up in the chat box. I don't know how to do it while we're streaming live, so that you guys can all look at these for yourselves. They appear to be public domain. I'm not trying to pirate or break any laws for copyright. So I will be putting this information out there so that you can read all this in detail for yourself, because really that's what it comes down to. But it talks about the incidence of complications varies from 30 to 40% of patients, and I'll just highlight that so you guys can read it easier. Affected by one or more complications. That can be done, that can involve the hardware, or it can be biological. The most common hardware-related complication is lead migration. If you know anything about spinal cord stimulators, you already know this. They put the leads in your spine. For those of you who don't know, a spinal cord is basically having a computer internally that's attached to your spinal cord to try and block a pain signal, not unlike they block HBO for people who don't pay for it. That I'm dumbing it down, I'm trying to keep it real, and I'm trying to keep it simple. Now, when it comes to lead migration, I talk to people all the time. I happen to have a Facebook group called Spinal Cord Stimulator Success Stories that I started a couple of years ago now. It's got around 1,400 members. And I started it because most people who have success stories with procedures go back to having a life. They're not in the support groups, which only leaves the failures behind, which makes it appear statistically like it doesn't really work or that they never work. Same thing with fusions. There's a lot more people complaining about their fusions online than talking about how great it was. There's a lot of people I talk to who have their leads migrate, and they absolutely are forthcoming about the fact I did something I was told not to do, I did something I shouldn't have done, and I ended up with a lead moving, and I knew I shouldn't have done it when I did it. Some people's leads move for reasons unknown. Okay, so there's a certain element of human interaction and human compliance in the most common hardware related. Leads complications such as failure or fracture have been reported. Obviously, anything mechanical can break and fail. The most common biological complications include infection and pain over the implant, blah, blah, blah. Their conclusion, as down here, spinal cord stimulation techniques are safe and reversible therapies. Then we're back to safe compared to what? There's been a lot, and I included this one. This is from the Associated Press, about the fact that the manufacturers have been lobbying and spending lots of money, and that is true, kind of. Once again, with most things in life, answers are not black and not white. Nervos spent more than all these companies combined have spent more than 2.2 million, I do believe that is. Could be 22. No, it looks like 22 million. I'm trying to read it while I'm working here. Since 2017, $22 million can be a lot of money depending on what you look at. It talks about Nervo spent 160,000, not picking on Nervo. And it also talks about trying to influence legislation that would benefit their overall business, which extends beyond stimulators. So I think if you look up what people spend on lobbying, 22 million is not a ton of money. I will guarantee you that the drug manufacturers, and I am damn sure the military contractors, spend far more than that. Again, I'm trying to offer all this information, and I'm gesturing here with my hands for no good reason, just because I'm trying to give you a realistic and complete view. I want to end with this. I found this PDF. I'm not going to begin to try and sit here and read it all. I don't know who to attribute it to. It looks like there's a company's name up there in web documents. Again, I will post it so that you can read it for yourself. It talks about it. It talks about procedures. Talks about all the alternative things you should have tried before you did it. Up to and including radiation therapy, rhizotomies, which is RFAs, or nerve ablations, blah, 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 so on. And then it gets risks to the procedure. And I'm going to scroll this real slow. I'm going to hit some of the ones, adverse reaction to anesthesia, back to those 50 deaths a year. On average, I think you would be hard-pressed to find something that requires general anesthesia that doesn't generate at least 50 deaths a year, just because of complications do happen. Again, I'm not trying to make these things out like they're perfectly safe, and if your doctor is, you might want to consider getting a new doctor. Are they invasive? Yes. Are they invasive compared to, for instance, my cervical fusion with 6 screws and a steel plate or a titanium plate and a couple of plugs put into my spine? I don't think so, but again, everybody's got a different tolerance for what they consider invasion or invasive. So as you can see, I'm scrolling down here. Death, you can die. It can happen. Although the risk is remote, death may occur. And it goes on to say after any surgical procedure. And I'm just going to continue to scroll here for a minute so that you guys can see some of these. You could get increased pain, infection, migration, nerve root injury, paralysis, weakness, paralysis, clumsiness, or numbness may occur as a result of the surgery, etc. Scar formation, spinal cord injury. Okay, so if your doctor is making these out to be absolutely perfectly safe with zero risk, they're not being genuine with you. They are not being honest, and that, I would say, is a big problem in and of itself. So let me try and bring myself back here. There I am, and we will continue on. Let me close this out. All right, hopefully that worked out well. I wanted to just talk quick, now that I've kind of droned on for a little bit, about perceived risk. Okay, so I'm going to try and go back to my desktop here and give you an example. Looks like that's working. Okay, right from the Washington Post. Deadliest animals. A lot of people are afraid of sharks. Okay, sharks kill one person a year. Alligators one, bears one. I heard hippos made the list, but it's hard to document. Okay, venomous snakes. Now I know people who are afraid of all these things. Lots of people are afraid of snakes. They kill 6. And I believe these are just U.S. numbers. I could be wrong, but spiders 7, non-venomous, ants and such, I guess 9. Cows. Who'd have thought cows kill 20 people a year? Dogs, 28 people per year. Other mammals, 52 people a year. Why they had to use a deer for that, I'm not sure. Wasps and hornets, 58 people a year. Now, I know a lot of people who are afraid of bees and will run from them. So, I guess that's not such a crazy idea. Now, all of these scare people. Some people have bee allergies, allergies to their poison, whatever. And I'm sure that probably factors into that number. But if you really were realistic about what is the most dangerous animal on the planet, that's right, the mosquito. And as long as I have lived, and most of my life was in Minnesota, I have never had anybody run in fear from a mosquito. So once again, it's your perceived risk. It's up to you. It's a personal thing. I can't give you, let me get off this desktop view. I can't give you an answer to whether or not it is safe. Is it safe enough? If you have occasional pain, I would say it's, personally, by my opinion, probably not for you. If your pain is moderate, if there's other ways that are controlling it adequately, it might not be for you. If you're looking at taking opiates for the next 20, 30 years with the diminishing returns, meaning that you generally build a certain tolerance to opiates and have to take more for the same result over time, blah, 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 that's something that you have to take up with your doctor. That's not something that I can just tell you. It's just, that's a very personal thing. So I don't know where else to go with that other than to tell you this is a decision you have to make for yourself. How safe they are, and if that's safe enough for you, how desperate you are, what else you've tried. Those are all factors into what you're going to decide. So you need to have an open and frank conversation with your doctor. Do your research. Again, if your doctor is misrepresenting this as being completely safe, completely risk-free, nothing could possibly go wrong, well, you know what they say. If it sounds too good to be true, it generally is. So let's me take a look at my notes here. And let's face it, with this kind of money on the table, they're talking billions of dollars in this industry. There's always unethical people who are going to do stuff that just isn't right, and that is borderline criminal. Let's be honest. It's just how it is. So I guess in summary, I don't have too much more to add to all that. I've tried to give you guys a lot of good, honest open information, tried to share both sides of it. You know, spinal cord stimulators are not for everybody. They're not for every condition. Like I said, they work great. I was basically housebound slash bedridden. I spent 8 months in bed waiting to get my implant, and I went back to standing on the casino floor 40 hours a week with no medication for about 18 months, and then my cervical issues, which aren't really related to my lower body issues, got the best of me, and I ended up leaving the workforce and becoming disabled. It's not suitable for my cervical issues. It is suitable for my lumbar issues, and that's all within the same person. You're going to do a trial because for some people they just don't work. Varying results come. Everybody's spinal cord literally is a little bit different. As we form in the uterus, in the womb, and our spinal cord forms. We go through changes. Everybody's is a little bit different. For those of you who don't know, quick side note, a lot of people think your spinal cord is like a stalk of celery with all the fibers, which would be the nerves running through it, and that's really not true. It's actually a lot more like the inside of a hot dog, which is why spinal cord injuries are so difficult to repair. I think I have covered pretty much everything I wanted to. I'm glancing over here at my notes again. Like I said, I want this to be interpersonal and relationary. I don't want it to be, just scripted and just me droning on. I want it to be very real. So, with that said, I'm going to pull up my call page. If you guys want to call and talk to me live, I'm going to chat here for a few more minutes and see if I get any calls. You can call me on the phone, 725-333-4140. That is my call-in number. Just call on in. I will take your call live on the air. So I'm going to stick with this page now so that you can have the info, see the phone number, and if you guys want to call in, that would be awesome. I would love to talk to some of you free if you've talk to some of you live if you have questions. Give me a call. And let's discuss it. If not, leave it in the chat, or if you're watching this on the replay at a later date, I do my very best to respond to all the questions I get, and all the comments I get. So, I really hope you will ask questions, state your opinion. I ask that we keep it civil. I mentioned earlier the hate mongers. Every once in a while I'll see somebody where people will mention a particular procedure or a particular medication, and that's the devil. Oh, it's time. Oh, don't. And they take a very extreme position. My experience has been that I've found generally that's because they or someone they know has been harmed by something, had a bad reaction. And at the end of the day, you have to weigh things. There's anecdotal evidence and there's statistical evidence. And of course, Mark Twain said there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. Unless it was Samuel Clemens. Anyway, for instance, I happen to know roughly 100 women that I'm friends with throughout my lifetime. 3 of them never drove a car in their life. That doesn't mean 30% or 3% of women don't drive. That just has to do with my particular group. So anecdotal evidence is just that. It's anecdotal. Don't get me wrong. If you're one of the people that have come up on the short end of the stick and you end up being one of the people who get injured or has a problem, obviously that's a big, big deal. And my sympathy goes out to you. I'm not trying to make light of it at all. So, with all that said, I'm not getting any phone calls that I see, and I really don't have a ton left to say. So rather than drone on and bore you guys to death, I'm going to sign out of here. I want to ask you to subscribe, turn on your notifications. Remember, I do this show every Sunday night. I also am going to start putting up more and more videos. You can visit my Facebook page, Joseph of Borg, or my YouTube page, Joseph of Borg, to see previous shows I've done, because I've been doing live streams for about a year on Facebook. So with that, this is Joseph of Borg. I'm heading out. I wish you guys a great evening, and I hope to see you next week. Thanks for watching.